Meeting for the Education, Environment, and Sustainability meeting. Today is December 5th. And can we have a roll call?
Calling the roll, Ms. Simon?
Here.
Ms. Brown? Here. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Schrein?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one is signed in.
We do have minutes from Halloween from this committee. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? All in favor? Minutes adopted. Approved. So we have one matter referred to committee. It's 2018-0238, and this matter actually was on the council agenda first reading 2 meetings ago, and because of the holiday, we had a little delay till it got to us in committee. It's one matter, and if we can have that read for the record. Madam.
Resolution number 2018-0238, authorizing an amendment to contract number CE 1700241 with Child Care Resource Center of Cuyahoga County, doing business as Starting Point for out-of-school time services for youth for the period 1/1/2018 through 12/31/2018, to extend the time period to 12/31/2019, and for additional funds.
Thank you very much. Hi, Robin. Can you give your name and your
Robin
status?
Martin, Family and Children First Council.
Okay.
This is our annual out-of-school time contract. A RFP was released by the Department of Job and Family Services on our behalf in 2016. Starting Point was the only responder. They serve as the state designated R&R for the Northeast Ohio region, which includes Cuyahoga County, Lake, Geauga, and Ashtabula. The contract covers all of our out-of-school time services, and a Starting Point will in turn release an RFP to vendors, and their contracts are pending the approval of this contract. The out-of-school time organizations for the city of Cleveland include 21 consortiums, 9 consortiums in the inner ring suburbs, and 1 consortium in the outer ring. So the way the system is set up, there's a lead organization that applies for services, and then other organizations up to 3 can come in with that organization to apply as a part of the consortium. And what they look for are gaps in the community. So none of them are providing the same services. So if you have one organization looking at arts, another organization may be looking at something that's educational based, and then the third organization may be looking at something that's sports. So they're trying to cover a continuum across the community. In addition to the out-of-school time, we also are funding educational transitions for youth. So that includes the March into Kindergarten program, preparing kids to make that bridge between preschool and kindergarten, and also preparing our parents to make that bridge. There are reading clubs that are part of the 3rd grade reading guarantee, and we are also looking at the club model for our middle school kids because they're not really interested in the traditional out-of-school time programming. So an example of a club would be a chess club, or sometimes they're reading clubs as well. For our high school kids, we have our ACT and SAT boot camps, and for our parents, we have the FAFSA boot camps. It also includes professional development for all of our providers, our software licenses for the efforts to outcome database that we use to monitor all of the programs. It includes the survey that we provide to the kids that we receive from the Search Institute, and it includes 1 full-time staff person that monitors the database, and there's a piece in there in the event that they need someone part-time for data entry. It's usually a temporary position.
Thank you. Questions? Councilwoman Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. That is a lot of bang for your buck.
Yes, it is.
Like, you said 21 consortiums.
Yes.
Is that right? And then a number of services you listed. Is it possible, and you probably don't have this before you right now, but is it possible to identify the number of services that are allocated through the counties? Because you mentioned Lake, Geauga, and Ashtabula.
This is just for Cuyahoga County.
Okay, this is just for Cuyahoga
I'm just
County.
identifying the Starting Point in that resource and referral role. They cover all of those counties, and Cuyahoga is just one.
Okay, all right. So these funds, however, do cover the number of things that you included, the the ACT boot camp for the high school students, the reading club for
Yes.
second to third grade, the march into kindergarten for. So could you give us a breakdown of how many participants are in each category of those services? And you don't have to do it now. If you could
Okay.
just now that's why I said you probably don't have that in
No,
front of you. So
because
if you
all
could
of
just
that-
let us know,
Okay.
and along with that, potentially the districts that are receiving those services
Absolutely.
from those individuals,
Absolutely.
for those individuals. Thank you.
The HHS, our computers are down, and it's from the state, so I wasn't able to pull any of that information before I came down.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Jones?
And Robin, you mentioned that you fill gaps, but not duplicating. I'm trying to, I can picture CTAG, whether it's in Cleveland, East Cleveland, or out in the suburbs. Is there any engagement with them, and if so, what, at the high school level?
The engagement with CTAG is part of these funds cover their summer bridge program. And so it covers the summer bridge and all of the CTAG programs. And so that money goes to Starting Point, and then they set up all of the summer bridge activities with the project manager so that those programs can operate over the summer.
Gotcha. So we keep the children engaged even during the summer?
Yes.
Even when we're not okay.
They have 4 weeks of programming.
4 weeks of programming, right? And now you did say 21 in Cleveland, and you mentioned a 9 and 1 in the first ring?
Yes.
Was that? Okay.
So the way the program is set up, we are set up through the RFP process to serve up to 4 in the outer ring suburbs. Historically, we've only had 2 communities apply for the funding. So if we do not have the number that we're set up for apply, then that money gets reallocated to either address first the inner ring suburbs that are interested, and then it goes to Cleveland.
I don't think I understood that.
So
said-
you start with the outer ring.
Okay,
And if they take their money, then their money goes to them. Any money that they do not spend then goes to the inner ring. If we don't need it for the inner ring, then it goes to Cleveland.
what's the thought process behind that? Why?
Cleveland has some other programs through the city of Cleveland and through United Way. A lot of times we're finding that in our inner ring and outer ring suburbs, they do not have a lot of these types of programs. So because we're trying to fill the gaps, we go outer ring, inner rings, Cleveland, when we're looking at leftover money.
What is the one outer ring? Is it a school? What is it, the outer ring?
It is Horizon Education Centers, and their partner is North Olmsted Recreation Center.
Describe the gap that you're filling there.
I would have to defer to Billy for that.
Okay.
Hi,
Mrs. Fierce?
Billy Osborne Fears. The gap that we're filling in that particular community is that prior to having funds for out-of-school time, there were very limited funds. So we've been able to expand that program and serve additional kids that did not have access to out-of-school time.
Okay, okay. All right. Again, also, Robin, you mentioned 3 areas: academics, sports.
That was just an example of how a consortium might look to provide services in a community. It's going to vary across all of these neighborhoods.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Miller?
Is Starting Point the lead agency for this program more or less on a continuing basis, or is there some point in the future where that basic question would be looked at again or put out for bid or some kind of process?
Historically, with Starting Point, we piggybacked on the state RFP. So whoever was designated as the state agency for R&R, that's who we used. Last year, we began doing an RFP process. We had, if my memory serves me correct, it was about 8 vendors that showed up, but they were showing up because they thought we were RFPing to the individual vendors like they do in, what's it called? Early childhood. what's the program called? UPK, like they do in UPK, that we were RFPing the vendors and then Starting Point would be the lead. When in fact, when they got there, they found out we were RFPing for the lead role. None of them were interested in taking on that responsibility because they do not have the capacity for it. So Starting Point has been the only vendor. At the end of this 3-year cycle, if the county asks us to, we will RFP again. We're probably going to get the same vendor.
And how is this program related or not related to the work that's being done by the neighborhood collaboratives?
Well, the neighborhood collaboratives, they may be some of the vendors that apply for out-of-school time programming. The difference would be with these funds, they will offer additional services. In terms of their role as a lead agency, we are not the only funder in this process. So Starting Point receives money from the state of Ohio for their R&R services, and they also receive money from the Cleveland Foundation. So it's a public-private partnership that funds that. If we were to go with a neighborhood collaborative, that partnership money would no longer exist. So those other services that we receive that cover the staff at Starting Point and some other services that we're not paying for would go away. So they're actually applicants to this process versus them applying to be the lead agency.
And but some of the collaboratives don't go through this process and just go through the collaborative process. Is that right?
Well, they may be applying for different services. So the collab contract that they're doing through the Department of Children and Family Services is a social service contract versus this contract is out of school time. So they may be, they may have it through their daycare component, they may do some out of school time through their daycare component. So that's why they would be an applicant in this process, but they're a social service applicant through the DCFS contract.
So as a summary statement, would it be correct to say that there's some overlap between the collaboratives and this program, but they
No.
also do some different things?
No. So this contract is only paying for after-school programming. And so the reason it's not an overlap is because the funding that they're given to the agencies, so if the agencies has 100 slots, but they have a waiting list for 25, this funding covers the waiting list for the 25.
I'm not saying overlap in the sense of there being duplication of services.
Okay.
I'm saying overlap in the sense of that that some of the same providers and some of the same service locations are involved in both programs. Is that correct?
No. So for example, I'll give you a couple off of the list. Open Doors Academy, National Youth Sports Program, the City of Bedford Heights Department of Community Life, another Open Doors, Ohio Guidestone, Shaker Heights Youth Center, Horizon Education Center. So there are some different providers here. Now there are some that are collabs, but the majority of them are not.
Okay, fine.
Councilman Jones.
Would Friendly Inn be an example of a neighborhood collab that's on your list?
Friendly Inn is a neighborhood collab that is on here.
So if I understand Councilman Miller's question, it would be like Friendly Inn, beautiful building, almost community center in the heart of public housing, and they've got a gymnasium, they've got rooms, the residents from the community walk there and receive service. If it's after school, they would have applied for a contract to you, to Ms. Fears, and they would have received funding to help deliver after-school programming within their neighborhood collab to the residents of that community. Is that close?
Yeah, come on. Because I think we're funding them in two different capacities.
Okay.
I think the use of the word collaborative, for out-of-school time, we require that providers within a neighborhood come together and develop a plan for serving the youth in their community, meaning they all sit at the table and plan. So we only will receive a proposal from one consortium. Okay, so we're going to change our word from collab to consortium because the collab that you're talking about is the DCFS collabs. And that's totally different. Some of our kids could receive services through the DCFS collaborative, but our consortiums come together and determine what do we have in our neighborhood for our young people? What do we think our neighborhood they need to provide in our neighborhood, and then they submit one proposal. In some cases, they divide the funding equally, or they divide the funding based on what the needs are in order to cover the neighborhood for a calendar year. So basically, most of them all provide summer activities as well. So there are two different consortiums. So the DCFS collab would not be the folks that are planning for out-of-school time.
Yeah, Councilman Miller, if I can, they're just two separate programs. The neighborhood collaboratives you're speaking of have to do with social service and some wraparound and identification of needs in the community. And this is totally a separate plan and
Yes.
for out-of-school youth. It's just two separate things.
And it's an RFP process, so it is competitive. I mean, sometimes we get more than one proposal within the neighborhood, but we will only fund one consortium. We're gonna use the word consortium. It's gonna take a while for me to get used to that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee or any further questions? Councilman Miller?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Okay, you can. All right, I have just a quick question. Aside from the procedural part I wanted to ask about, but when you identify needs in a community for the youth and they're, with a consortium, provide different programs through each of, let's say 3 different places came together as a consortium. One would do art, one would provide something else. Is that what
Yes.
you meant?
Yes.
Now, could there ever be cross collaboratives if somebody, I know South Euclid did an environmental program. Would kids from different consortiums go to a different consortium program?
Yes. So one of the things we have in our ETO, efforts to outcome system, is they have a scan-in, because we're checking to see if they're going across programs in the community, but we're also checking to see if they're going across programs within a center. And the best example would be Boys and Girls Club. Prior to us getting that program, we knew a kid showed up at Boys and Girls Club at 4 o'clock and left at 6. And that was all we knew. You were there for 2 hours. Now we can tell you during that 2-hour span, each program that touched the child. So we can see it across the neighborhood and across an individual program. And the county.
Okay, great, good. Lastly, so you're seeking an amendment to this contract. Is this going to be a continuous annual event where you seek an amendment, or is this contract terminate on a 3-year basis and you go out again?
No.
How does this going to work?
This, so under the statute for Family and Children First Council, we are required to have a plan in our community for child well-being. And so in our county, our child well-being plan is split into 2, early childhood and youth development. And we go through a process every 3 years or 3 to 5 years with our Family and Children First Council, and it's open to the community to determine what our priorities are going to be. So at this juncture, this is our priority until we go back and look at the list again. I foresee this being a priority for us for a while because it addresses the issue of our children being safe between the time they get out of school and the time parents get home from work. And so they have somewhere to go, they're not at home, and they're not engaging in their own whatever activities they think of. And I have to tell you, I have a 13-year-old, now I pay for his program that he goes to a program. He goes 3 days a week. On Mondays and Fridays, when he is not in that program, I am on pins and needles because I know he's supposed to go straight home after school, but I'm not there to watch. He doesn't have to go straight home after school. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I know where he is. And so I don't have to worry about him at somebody else's house or in the community engaging in negative activity because I know where he is.
Right, and so some people can pay for their own latchkey through the school
Correct.
if they have the ability.
Yes.
Yes, but if
But,
they don't, this is available to anybody
Yes.
in the district or
Yes.
consortium
Yes.
as a backup.
Yes.
In terms of when you say this is going to be repeated, so we're going to have an amendment to the original contract every year for a while?
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Okay, so I'm assuming we're going to need to get this passed under suspension since the end of well, no, it's for next year.
It's for 2019.
Yeah, so we're good for a third reading.
Okay.
Okay, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to make a motion that this move to our next council meeting for second reading and then recommendation of passage and then on to third.
thank you.
Okay, do I have a second?
Can I have one final question? A very
Sure.
quick one. How many children are served throughout, through this $1.6 million?
3,000.
3,000. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now I need clarification. So this amount serves 3,000 and then the additional funding serves more children, or is just this the combination of all the funding serve 3,000?
It's 3,000 each year. So this is for the 3,000 that are going to be served in 2019.
This amount plus other amounts, or just this amount? Because there's other funding
Other funding that's coming from other organizations, yes.
help the 3,000 as
Correct.
well.
But some of the funding that's coming from the other organizations is covering administrative pieces,
Got
not
it.
necessarily the direct service
I
component.
have it. Okay, fine. So we have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll have a second reading and then a third reading, and you'll hopefully have the contract. Thank
thank
you,
you.
Robin and Billy. No miscellaneous business. I'm going to adjourn and have a good holiday. I don't know if we'll be back before. Thanks.